record this event so that you can go back and review, or colleagues who aren't able to join can view the recording. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Today's webinar will be similar to others in that we'll have a demo from Demagi of the enhancements that are going live. And I do want to mention that while this was originally scheduled as a 217 release, it is now a 218 release. So the enhancements will be going live tonight. They're not live already. And this webinar, we're going to do the demo with Elena from Demagi, and then Laura Santilli from DOH will give a brief introduction to a new exposure notification enhancement that's coming. And then Kevin Sheldon from NYS is going to provide some more detail on that new exposure notification enhancement that's coming soon. And then we'll have Q&A for everything at the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Elena.
Thanks, Robin. I'm just pulling up the system and then I'll go ahead and share my screen. It looks like you might need to give me presenter permissions though.
Doing that
there
right
we go.
now.
Thanks. All right, perfect. And can you just confirm that you're seeing the CommCare system?
Yes, we are. Thanks, Elena.
All right, excellent. So thank you everyone for joining today. We have some really exciting new enhancements coming out this evening to the system, like Robin mentioned. So I'm looking forward to walking you through them today. This is a little bit of a unique release in that all of the changes that we've made apply both to case investigators and to contact tracers. So I'm going to be running through logged in as a case investigator today, but all of these changes will apply equally to both the contact tracing and the case investigation side of things. So once again, I'm logged in right now as our test case investigator user. And this release has really been focused on optimizing system performance, as well as streamlining some key workflows for case investigators and contact tracers, and bringing new and enhanced search functionality to the system as well. So those are some of the changes that I'm going to be walking through today. So the first one that I wanted to talk through pertains to all of my queues or my lists of cases. So to show that, I'm just going to come into the all open cases queue here. And for case investigators and contact tracers, when you come into your all open cases or all open contacts queue, you probably often see a very, very long list of records, all of the open cases or open contacts in your county. So what we've done is we've actually updated these queues and we've now tailored them specifically to you. So you'll notice if I scroll down here, I only have a couple pages here of cases showing in my list. And so by default, when I open up this queue or any of my queues, I'm going to see a tailored list of records, and specifically the records that are the most relevant to me and the most likely to require action from me. So those will be cases, or on the contact tracing side, contacts that I am the owner of, either the primary or temporary owner. So if they're assigned to me, as well as records that I have accessed in the past 5 days. So even if a case or a contact isn't assigned to me, but I have worked with that record and documented on that individual in the past 5 days, they will also appear by default in my queues. So there's a couple goals to this change. One, like I mentioned, is just to make it easier to find the records that I most am likely to be working with or are most relevant to me right off the bat. And one is also to allow the queues to load more quickly. So the system will, by default, no longer need to load all of the open cases in my county, which means that it can load more quickly and save me some time every time I'm opening up one of these queues. The next enhancement that we have added, which we're really excited about, is a search functionality within the queues themselves. So previously, I know you were able to enter a search in this search field up at the top, as well as sort on specific columns that were of interest to kind of bring records that share a value in that particular field together. But we've also added this enhanced search functionality, which I can access here in this bottom left-hand corner, which will bring me to the full record search screen, and it will allow me to search on multiple fields at one time. So rather than just enter maybe one search term into the top bar, I can now search on a range of fields, including first and last name and date of birth, for example, all at once. These search fields do vary by queue, and they're designed to mimic the columns in the queue. So they won't mimic the columns exactly or perfectly, because some of the data that's displayed in those columns isn't currently searchable or compatible with the formatting of the search, but they will mimic them as closely as we could. And like I said, this allows me to search on more than one field at once. So this is really important for a couple of reasons. The first is that if I just wanted to see every single record that qualifies for this queue, I could just go ahead and click submit without putting in any search terms, and I'll get to see all of the records that qualify for this queue that I'm in, which in this case is all open cases. If, on the other hand, I wanted to search for a specific individual and I know what I'm looking for, or I wanted to search for a group of individuals that, for example, were opened within a specific date range because I want to maybe work with them first, I could do that as well. So in this case, I'm going to do a search. I know the case that I'd like to find. So I'm just going to search on last name. Great. And so you'll see this works if you've been using the search all cases feature. This works very similarly. It's just that it's now located within the queue. And it's an important distinction because rather than searching all of the cases in my county, I'm specifically only searching the cases that qualify for this queue. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Veronica here. And I just want to note that even though Veronica didn't display by default for me, I can still access her record. I can still submit the case investigation form or any other form that I would typically be able to document on. So really, I have the same access to her other than that she just doesn't display by default right away when I open the list. The next change that we've made that I wanted to note is that we've changed the system behavior for when we actually submit a form. So previously, when I would submit a form, I would be brought back to the main menu. And then if I wanted to access that same queue I was working in and access another case or contact, I would have to reselect that queue, let it load, and then continue with my workflow. So we have updated that behavior. And now if I submit a form, I'm just going to choose the assign or reassign form as an example. I do apologize for the error messages. We've been having some challenges with the system this morning that our team is hard at work investigating, but we're going to do our best to see if we can demonstrate this behavior here. Maybe I'll just give it one more shot. All right, well, maybe I can just explain the way that this will work then. So like I said, if I submit a form, I'm going to be brought to the queue itself. So let me just see if I can jump out of this here quickly. Just gonna see if I can log back in and maybe that will help us out. All right, thanks for being with me. I'm just going to try that one more time, and then if we're not able to show it today, then I think hopefully you've at least understood the concept and you'll be able to see it in your live environment starting tomorrow morning. So I'm just going to come back into my all open cases and jump into Veronica. All right, so I'm just jumping into the assign or reassign the case form. And I'm just gonna assign Veronica here to a new primary owner. And we haven't made any changes to this form itself, but I just wanted to show you what the end of form navigation will look like. So I'm gonna hit submit. All right, and you'll notice that I'm brought back to the all open cases list directly. So then if I needed to just continue my workflow, work with another case, I could jump into Jughead or Archie here and just kind of keep cycling through my workflow rather than having to reload the queue that I was working in. The next workflow that I wanted to show you all that we are about to release enhancements to is our de-duplication workflow. So to do that, I'm just going to jump back to the main menu and come into my cases. All right, and I'm going to be de-duplicating Jughead today to show you all what this workflow looks like. So Jughead is a case that's assigned to me. Maybe I want to complete his initial interview, but before I do that, I want to see if there are any duplicates in the system and make sure that I de-duplicate him. So I'm going to come to this search for duplicate patients option here at the bottom of the screen. So this is just slightly different from what you would see currently, which is an identify duplicate patients form. So this, again, we're taking advantage of our new and enhanced search functionality to improve the deduplication workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and search for duplicate patients here. And I'm going to be brought to this, hopefully now somewhat familiar search screen. And there's a couple of things that are really nice about this. So one is that I can now search on multiple criteria here at once to find the most likely duplicates for Jughead. The other thing that's nice is that my search criteria is actually pre-populating based on Jughead's information. So it's already pulling in his first and last name as well as his home phone number, which are populated on his record, which just makes it a little bit easier for me to search if I want to leave these criteria as they are. I can, of course, change them if I wanted to and just like manually make any changes here. But if I'm happy with these, I'll go ahead and click submit. And this is just going to search for records that will match this criteria. And the system's returning one potential match, it looks like, or potential duplicate here. So we have another case record with the same first and last name and the same exact home phone number. So this seems like a pretty good candidate to be a potential duplicate. So what I'm going to do is just select this duplicate. And then I'm going to jump in to that more familiar identify duplicates form. So from here, the workflow should be pretty similar to the one that you're used to today. So I have my identify duplicate patient form. And the system's going to show me information about the case that I originally selected, which was the Jughead Jones that was assigned to me in my cases queue. Then it's also going to show me the details and the information about the potential duplicate record that I selected after I performed my search. So once I reviewed that information, I can indicate if this case is in fact a duplicate or not. In this case, this does look like a duplicate. They have the same phone number, so I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. And then I can indicate which of these two cases is the one that I would like to keep and which is the one that should be closed. So I'm going to keep the current patient, which is the initial record that I had selected from the My Cases queue. And I'm going to go ahead and submit the form. And when I do this, that initial record that I selected will be maintained, and then that second record that I selected after performing my search will be closed and marked as a duplicate record. The final enhancement that I wanted to call out today is that we have added some new questions on the case investigation as well as the contact monitoring forms that will allow me to document additional detail about vaccine information. So I'm actually just going to jump back into Jughead's record and open up his case investigation form to show that to you all. All right, so I'm just going to jump directly to the vaccine section. Of course, in real life, if you were conducting your full initial interview, you would go through your standard script and your standard set of questions. But just for the purposes of this demo, I want to jump right to documenting about vaccines. So during our most recent release, you may have noticed or remembered that we added this one question here: have you received a COVID-19 vaccine? And we updated the header of the clinical section to now read clinical and vaccine information to hopefully make it a little bit easier to see where the vaccine information should be recorded. So if Jughead tells me that he's received any doses of the COVID vaccine so far, I'm going to indicate yes to this first question. And what will be new with this release this evening is these additional questions to document more detail. So we've added for each dose the ability to document both the manufacturer as well as the date that the dose was received. So for example, if Jughead lets me know that he received the Pfizer vaccine, I can document that. If this is another manufacturer that we don't have on the list, I do have the ability to indicate that as well, and I can then free text specify the name of that manufacturer if I needed to. But let's say that Pfizer's the one that Jughead did receive. We can indicate that, and then we can also select the date of that first dose. Now, there is some checking on these date fields just to minimize the risk that I make a mistake when I'm clicking on the date. So for example, if I choose a date in the future, the system's going to let me know that I can't do that because obviously Jughead can't have received this 2 days from now. So I can go ahead and correct that quickly and change that to the appropriate date in the past. If Jughead hasn't received the second dose yet and he's sort of in between doses, I can indicate that here. And then I would be finished documenting my vaccine information. But if he has gotten both doses, I am going to be able to put that here. Let's imagine that this is the same manufacturer for the second dose. And once again, we have some date checking here. So I won't be able to enter a date in the future. But I also, for the second dose, will not be able to enter a date prior to when the first dose was received. So if I try to do that, once again, I'm just going to get this warning message from the system letting me know that the date can't be before the date of the first dose. So that'll just help me out, double check this. Maybe Jughead just received the second dose yesterday, and I can indicate that here. So these are all of the enhancements for this release that I wanted to cover today, but it looks like we do have time left and happy to answer any questions coming in through the chat, Robin, if there are any.
Thanks so much, Elena. I think we're going to hold all of our Q&A till the end after we do the exposure notification presentation as well. But there were a lot of comments that folks would like to see the deduplication process on the contact side as well. So I'm wondering if you could show that.
Yeah, maybe I could try to see if I can prepare that while the exposure notification presentation is going on, and then we can circle back if that would work.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. So what I'm going to do now is pass it over to Laura to give a brief intro of the exposure notification that is a planned enhancement.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And good morning, everybody. It's been a while since I've been able to join you due to some of our vaccine efforts. So I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe between all the COVID activities that are going on and the crazy weather that we've been having with another storm on tap for us at this end of the state. So I just wanted to share a little update for those of you that remember when we first launched COVID Alert New York. I was really, really interested, in the application of this feature. And it's really the ability for us with our phones pretty much always attached at our hip to be able to use that as a device that can kind of tell us where danger, might be from a COVID exposure. So that app, we had a very successful launch and, more than 1 million people have downloaded it. But as we always say, the more we use the tool, the better off it is for everybody. So with that in mind, we're adding, I suppose, an enhancement to an enhancement to be able to tap into this type of technology in an even greater fashion and make it available to even more people. And with the intent and hope that even more will activate this feature and be able to collect those pings, as we call it, where you get just too close to somebody else. And then if, unfortunately, somebody that you did get too close to also becomes a COVID positive individual, there's a way to then notify anybody that they may have been in contact with. And this is really critical when it's not your normal, circle of contact friends, right? We might be able to easily identify who's in our pod and who is, in our normal inner circles. But this is really helpful when we do, venture out into the public yonder, so to speak, and may not always know who it is that we might be coming too close to. So I don't want to steal too much of Kevin's thunder, but it's something that I'm really excited about from the get-go, and I love that we have this enhancement as well, like I said, with the intent of increasing the use of this tool and technology. Information is really powerful, and the more people know that they might have been exposed, the more aware they can be, and then go ahead and keep themselves, home so that they don't further the spread. Especially with, I'm joking, being in the vaccine world, that it's a race between vaccines versus the variants, and I got my money on the vaccines. But just in case the variants, decide to rear, their ugly head in March before we can really, get the vaccination levels up where we need it to be, I'm really grateful for these types of tools and modern technology that can help us fight the beast. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin. I thank you again, as always, for all the work that you're all doing, part of this effort. It's really Herculean, and each and every one of you, and you may think you have a small part, but everybody doing their small part is really a great, massive effort to turn the tide. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I put together a few slides that kind of provide a basic overview of what we're trying to release here. And thank you, Laura, for the introduction. Just an overview here on the feature. So as of a couple of days ago, we've had around 1.3 million people that have downloaded the COVID Alert app on their smartphones. And while that seems like a lot, kind of compared to the entire population in New York State, just looking at our data, a much smaller subset actually received a notification that they may have come into contact with another individual, or come into contact with an individual who tested positive for COVID. So to help us reach our goal of I guess, reaching as many people as possible with this feature, we've worked with some of our partners at Apple, and they have made available, or they've made a new feature available for iPhone devices that will notify others of potential exposures to COVID. This feature is automatically embedded within somebody's iPhone settings. And the best part about this is that you don't actually need to download an app. So COVID Alert New York, has very robust features. It's been live since, I think it was October 1 of 2020. But you actually have to physically go download that from the App Store or Google Play Store. This feature for iPhones is intended to serve as an alternative to COVID Alert New York. It's not going to replace it. It will essentially supplement it. And it will give the Department of Health, as I mentioned, the ability to achieve the goal of reaching potentially millions of additional users across the state. So on the left-hand side is just a basic example of what we call like an availability alert that's going to go out. If you don't have COVID Alert New York on your phone, you'll get this alert saying that this feature is available, and you can actually click on that and go through a very basic series of onboarding steps to enable it. It's very easy to do, and you don't need to go download anything, which is the best part. So, how does this impact case investigators? So, the good part about this is that most of the current process for case investigators will remain the same. So the process that you guys are doing or operating with to generate those positive verification codes via CommCare, well, that process will generally be the same. There are a couple of immediate changes that we're rolling out that right now, or prior to today, actually. The positive codes that you were generating via CommCare were 6 digits. It will now be 8 digits. And that's, mainly for security purposes, but it's also based on it's more of a national standard that we are adopting. And then the biggest improvement that an end user will see is that the text messaging capability that a case investigator, the text message that a case investigator can issue to a positive individual, it will now have an embedded deep link in that text message that the user can click on, and they will automatically be directed to the right place. So, prior to today, you could issue a text message, it will have the code, but the individual would have to go navigate to their app and click on a series of screens and enter that code into their app. Now they can still do that, the manual functionality still exists, but with this new feature, there will be a deep link in that text message. So once they click on that, it will bring them right to the screen that they have to enter that positive code, and it will automatically populate on that screen, making it a lot easier for end users to get that information entered. And I don't have more screenshots at this time, since I know that the new feature has not been publicly announced, but regardless of whether they have this new feature or whether they have COVID Alert New York, the deep linking functionality that we're rolling out today as I mentioned, it will direct them to the right place. So it will direct them exactly to what feature they have available on their phone. So when this is released, we will be circulating an updated quick reference guide, and it will have a more detailed overview. It will have more detailed screenshots, and it will contain instructions with an updated script to support the new exposure notifications feature for iPhones. So what are the differences and I guess similarities between the new feature and COVID Alert New York? So as I mentioned before, this feature is directly embedded into the iPhone settings menu. So you don't have to go download anything. It was actually made available as with a previous operating system update from Apple. It would essentially be on your phone if you have the appropriate operating system or the updated operating system on your device. The new feature is essentially a light version of COVID Alert New York and is really only used to receive notifications and enter the positive codes that are issued by case investigators. We still recommend folks to download COVID Alert New York if they want to use the more robust features that it has, such as like viewing the positive testing or positive case data and tracking symptoms. But as Laura mentioned, really the goal of this, the main benefit of this, I should say, is that it can reach a lot more people, and those folks don't have to download an app. It's something that they would see the availability alert on their iPhone. They can click on it and enable it if they so choose. We're hoping that we're going to see a significant volume increase or uptake of the amount of people that actually have this feature on their phone, so that more people could essentially be alerted if they came into close contact with a COVID positive individual. So if a positive individual uploads their 8-digit code into the iPhone feature, the best part about this is that people with either that feature on their phone or COVID Alert New York can get exposure notifications. So both of them are compatible with one another. It doesn't matter which one you upload that positive code into. The technology is the same for both. All of the security and privacy features are the same for both. So again, it's essentially just getting that technology on more phones, and the new feature, the exposure notification feature for iPhones, is just a different front end mechanism or end user facing mechanism to receive those alerts. The one thing that I will highlight is that the new feature is only for iPhones. This is something that, again, Apple has made available directly through the operating system. We've been in discussions with Google, for this type of feature for Android devices. It actually is a downloadable app. So the thought process there is that, if you're going to go download an app, we don't want to cause confusion. We'll still have COVID Alert New York available for download for Android devices. So this new feature is only going to be, at least at the moment, embedded in the operating system for iPhones, and Android devices will continue to use COVID Alert New York. As in terms of release for this, I don't think we have an official date, but it may be available. Hopefully, I would say within the next week or so. But we will keep you guys updated. And then, as I mentioned, a quick reference guide with all of the information will be circulated once this has been announced and made available to end users. And again, we're really hoping that this will significantly increase the usage and uptake of an exposure notification technology across the state. And that's really what we're hoping for and planning for. So, and I think that's all I had as in terms of slides. Laura, did you want to add anything?
Sorry, Kevin, I got the double mute going. No, that was a nice overview. So I think, I think it kind of lays it out and sets it up for everybody. And if there's any questions, I think we can go into that mode, both for the generic updates CommCare updates as well as this piece as well. So thanks, Kevin, for that.
Great, thanks so much, Laura and Kevin. Kevin, we just have a couple of exposure notification questions, so I think it makes sense to just do those first, and then we'll switch back over to the CommCare questions.
Yeah, of course.
So there were a couple questions just asking for clarification if this exposure notification in the 8-digit code applies to the contact tracers as well.
Yeah, so the 8-digit codes again are issued through the CommCare process, but really the talking points or the scripts that we're going to have for contact tracers, there will likely be some updates basically explaining what is available. But again, the 8-digit codes and the process to generate those, it should be pretty much the same. You'll answer a series of questions in CommCare, but and there's going to be some updated instructions with the new QRG, but the process to actually generate those codes, I think it's a pop-up screen, that process should be the same. And then the process to issue the text message to send the new deep link, that shouldn't change. You still collect the phone number, you enter that in on the screen, you click the button, and then they'll essentially get the new version of the text message. But the process for the case investigators shouldn't really change a lot.
Right. And that process is just for case investigators.
Yep.
There's nothing within CommCare for the contact tracers regarding.
Yeah, I think the quick reference guide might have I'll just double check. It might just, again, have a couple of updated talking points. Because I think, from a tracer or contact tracer perspective, it's more about promoting the awareness. If somebody doesn't have it, we certainly recommend, I think the language recommends the individual to go either download COVID Alert or enable the feature on their phone.
Okay. And then the next question is, are members of the public who have iPhones, are they able to disable the exposure notification setting?
Yeah, so the way that it's going to work is that the setting itself is embedded in your iPhone settings, but to actually utilize the exposure notifications, the technology, it's an opt-in model. So it won't automatically be enabled. You have to go click on a series or go through a series of onboarding screens and actually enable it. The one thing that you will get, though, if you don't have COVID Alert New York on your phone, is you will get almost like a push notification saying that this feature is available. But it is an opt-in model. It's not, and if you do enable it, there's always the option to disable it as well.
Great, thank you. And do the exposure notifications come from New York State after the positive person uploads their 8-digit code?
Yeah, so the exposure notifications will come through the mechanism or the front end mechanism that you have on your phone. So if you have the feature on your iPhone, the notification will come through that, and will almost appear like it's they just call it exposure notification. So the pop-up, the graphic, it will all be very similar to what you would get in COVID Alert New York. But again, it just depends on what you have on your phone. So the information, and again, once we release the quick reference guide with more screenshots and information, you'll see the content. But if you do get an exposure notification through the iPhone setting, when you do click on that, the guidance and the information included on those screens, they're very similar. It's very similar to what you see in COVID Alert New York. So all of the recommendations to, isolate yourself, stay at home, call your healthcare provider or the state hotline, schedule a test, et cetera. All of that guidance is pretty much the same. And again, it's just a different front end mechanism on your phone to receive that alert.
Great, thank you. And similarly, when will positive cases be sent the code for the new iPhone feature? So it's during the interview if the case investigator triggers that process?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the process for the case investigator should pretty much be the same. So, you know, there within the interview process, there is, I believe, I don't know the exact term, but it's like the exposure alert or the exposure notification section of the interview, where you ask the series of questions, and then, you know, if somebody does have the feature or the app on their phone, you can go through all the way through the process and be able to generate that code. So you know, the interview, the component of the interview is the same. It's just, again, some of the content within that interview process for the exposure notifications, just some of the wording or the questions will change, and that will be included in the quick reference guide.
Great, thank you. And will iPhones automatically update to include this feature?
Yeah, so I did include a footnote on one of the slides, but this feature is going to be available for iOS 12.5, which covers a lot of really old iPhones, like iPhone 5s, I think, and then 13.7 and up. So we'll cover pretty much all of the newer iPhones. You have to have one of those compatible operating system versions to be able to receive the availability alert. But you can also manually enable it as well. So if you don't get the alert, it's not like you're going to miss out on an opportunity. There will be instructions for an end user to go into their settings and enable it manually if they so choose. But it should hit the majority of iPhones that don't. And I think I mentioned this before. If you have COVID Alert New York already on your phone, you will not receive the availability alert that this feature exists, because you already essentially have that technology on your phone. And we're not going to prompt users to switch over to this new feature. We want them, you know, for the most part, to stay on COVID Alert New York, because it does have more robust features. The purpose of this is to hit, you know, the majority of other iPhones that don't already have this technology enabled on their phone.
Great, thanks. And I think this is an important clarification. Will being notified on iPhone through this exposure notification that you've been exposed to a positive case create a contact file? So I think this question is asking if you get an exposure notification that you've been exposed to a positive case through the iPhone exposure notification, will a contact be created in CommCare?
So, and Laura, you can chime in on this if you want, but as of right now, there is no direct link between receiving an exposure notification and creating a contact case or anything back into CommCare. Again, the primary purpose is to you know, to alert somebody as soon as possible. You know, once somebody you know, anonymously you know, shares their COVID diagnosis via the app or through the new feature, you know, you should receive an alert to essentially say, hey, you know, isolate yourselves, you know, stay at home, contact your healthcare provider, schedule a test. But the process, like if, you know, a local health department as part of contact tracing is to call that person, that process should stay the same. There shouldn't, but, you know, long story short, as of right now, it's not going to automatically create any case into CommCare.
That's right, Kevin. It's really an early warning system, and it's not foolproof, right? You know, there's two particular examples, right? But I don't want to make policy based on, you know, edge cases, but you know, maybe that exposure was in a healthcare environment and that person had full PPE. So yeah, they may have been, you know, exposed to somebody with COVID, but they were in full PPE, so it's not a true exposure. You know, one example, right? Another example is maybe it was somebody on the other side of you know, an office cubicle wall or something where they weren't in shared spaces, and it wouldn't be considered a close contact, you know, because there was they were in a different room, but, you know, by true proximity app, you know, they pinged as being close to each other, but in reality, it wasn't exposed. So it's not 100% foolproof. It's meant to be an early warning that there's a, you know, strong potential that there was an exposure, and we want you to change your behavior because of that and consider yourself at risk. So therefore, we want you to watch your symptoms and, you know, stay away from others. So that's really the goal.
Great, thanks, Laura. And I think the final question I'm seeing is if the opt-in is for notification only, or does that also apply to the collecting of information for exposure notification?
Yeah, it's a good question. The opt-in is for both. So, you know, I did mention it's kind of like a light version of COVID Alert New York, but it serves really two primary functions. So one is to receive notifications, and the other is to, you know, if you do test positive and if you choose to anonymously share your diagnosis and alert others, you can use the feature to enter that 8-digit code that the contact tracer provides to that individual.
Great, and just one more I saw pop up. So it doesn't tell you information about exact people in your area, like your neighbors, right? It just would tell you if you were exposed to someone.
Yeah, so another good question. So the core technology itself, it's fully privacy protecting, and all of the transactions that occur are completely anonymous. The phones will just exchange secure random codes with one another if they come into close contact or close proximity. And if you do upload your what we call like positive diagnosis, if you will, and you upload one of those 8-digit codes, you know, anybody, it essentially issues an alert to anybody that, you know, any of the codes that the positive person shared with the others, those are the folks that are going to get alerted. But the alert does not contain any information of, you know, who was diagnosed or where you may have been. It does not track your location. So all of the features and the privacy protecting information and features that COVID Alert has, this new feature for iPhones, it's the same exact technology, and all of the configuration is the exact same. Well, it's Apple and Google developed the technology, so it is going to be the same for both this feature and for COVID Alert New York.
Great, well, thank you so much, Kevin, for all of that information, and thank you, Laura. I'm gonna go ahead now and pass it back to Elena. And Elena, I'll make you a presenter if you are able to provide some more to be able to show the contact side of things.
Sure, yeah, I'm gonna do my absolute best. So are you able to see CommCare?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the demo, everything that we looked at today applies equally to case investigators and contact tracers. So I am going to show the deduplication workflow one more time from the contact tracing perspective, but I did just want to also mention explicitly that those tailored queues that we talked about will not apply to supervisor users specifically. And the reason for that is we know that supervisors are frequently working with records that are not necessarily assigned to them, and often supervisors are performing tasks like assigning records to contact tracers or case investigators. So for that reason, supervisor users will still by default see all of the cases or contacts in their queues rather than that tailored shorter default view. So I just wanted to make sure I called that out. But yeah, to show the deduplication workflow, I logged in as a contact tracer test user in our testing environment, and I'm just going to come to my contacts. And I have a contact here assigned to me that I'm going to deduplicate. Have to remember what I named them. All right, great, Hiram. So I'm going to go ahead and select Hiram, and then I'm going to come into this search for duplicate contacts screen here. And once again, it's going to bring me to that new enhanced search screen. And it's also going to pre-populate some of this data from Hiram's record. So Right now, it's pulling in a first and last name as well as a phone number. So if I wanted to change this, I could change it. If I thought phone number was maybe too specific and I just wanted to look for all the contacts with the same first and last name, I could. That might be a really long list depending on if it's a common name. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave the phone number in and see if I can find a potential duplicate contact with this search. So to do that, I'll just click submit. And then this is going to return any contacts that share that first and last name as well as the home phone number, since that's what I searched on. So it looks like it's returning one for me here, which I will select. And then I'm just going to come into that familiar identify duplicate contact form, which you may be familiar with using. And this form is going to show me some more detail about the contact that I originally selected from the My Contacts queue. And it's also going to show me some of the details about the contact that I selected as a potential duplicate when I ran my search. So then I can indicate whether or not I believe there is a true duplicate here. And then I can indicate, as you do today, which of these contacts is the one that should be kept. So I'm going to keep the contact that I originally selected, and then the contact that I identified as a duplicate through my search is going to be closed and marked as a duplicate. So I'll just go ahead and submit. So as you can see, it looks very, very similar on both the contact tracing and case investigation side of things, but that was how it will look from the contact tracer's perspective.
Thanks so much, Elena. And just to confirm, since there were a number of questions, the new search functionality and the different queues will also apply to contacts?
Yeah, so absolutely everything that we talked about today will also apply to contact tracers. So if I jump into, for example, all open contacts, excuse me, I will see by default that more tailored list of contacts that are assigned to me, contacts that I have interacted with in the last 5 days, as well as contacts that share an index case with any of those contacts for me. I'll also have the new search function. So if I want to search all the contacts that qualify for this queue, I can do that right from here. And I can enter, for example, a first name and find any contacts that qualify for this queue that meet that search criteria. The other thing that I did want to also mention is that we've added this sticky search. So if I come back in and search again, it will keep my most recent search here. And then I can make adjustments to it as needed if I wanted to maybe add a last name, for example, or more detail.
Great, thank you. And
Robin, I would
yes,
like to
go
bring
ahead,
something
Kristen.
up. Yeah,
Please.
so I think since you guys can't see everyone that's in attendance, we do have a mixture of both local health department and virtual contact tracing and case investigating staff. So if you're seeing features that are brand new to you, if you're not a case investigator, if you don't normally have access to cases, you can please ignore those updates and just pay attention to updates that are relative to contact tracing. And if you don't normally use de-duplication, again, don't think that that is a new part of your job. That is just a new enhancement for people that already use that feature. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you for clarifying that, Kristen. And that sort of leads into, there were a couple questions around the new filtered lists, like this all open contacts that you would see the contacts assigned to you if you're a contact tracer, and contacts that you've records that you've opened in the last 5 days, as well as contacts that have the same index case as those contacts. So that filter view is just for contact tracers, right? Supervisors would see all open contacts.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's true for contact tracers and case investigators, but not for supervisor users.
Okay. And then there are some specific questions on the searching, I think, and the deduplication functionality. So there's one question around this new functionality. Seems like it may eliminate the useful result of finding household matches with the same number. What happened to the date of birth zip code search? So is there a way to search on date of birth and zip code?
I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and bring that screen back up. I guess just to make sure I've understood, I think you mentioned the deduplication workflow, but then you mentioned identifying contacts in a household, and
so this may be, sorry, it doesn't say the
two fit together.
Deduplication. Yeah, this may be the search functionality. I apologize. It just says this seems to eliminate the useful result of finding household matches with the same number.
Okay, so it sounds like they mean by phone number.
Mm-hmm. And then they're also asking about date of birth and zip code. So
okay, sure. So
yeah, go right ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna bring up the search screen and then share. So it is true that within the queues themselves, we have matched closely the available columns. However, if you access the search contacts module, or same thing, well, I guess this is mostly relevant for contacts. If you access the search contacts module, you can still look for all the contacts that share a home phone number, for example, to identify contacts that you think might be in the same household. You also still have zip code here and street address, as well as date of birth. So I think that it's just a nuance of if you access the search from the search contacts feature or within the queues themselves. And then I also just wanted to make a note that we haven't actually removed any of the existing functionality within the queues themselves. So if I really wanted to still sort based on one of the column headers, I can still do that. If I still wanted to search here, I could. But I have this sort of new option to have a more advanced search if I want one. So hopefully that answers the question. There shouldn't be any functionality removed in terms of identifying contacts that share a phone number or could potentially live in the same household.
Great, thank you. And in terms of the views that the contact tracer sees or the case investigator, are the contacts or cases in the queue listed in date order or any specific order, or would they have to sort by the open date if they wanted them listed from oldest to newest or newest to oldest?
Yeah, so once again, they can still leverage the same sorting that they do now, but the queue won't be sorted by default on any particular data point.
Okay. And you just clarified that the search cases and search contact queues are staying, and contact tracers and case investigators can continue to utilize that search functionality. There's a question if the search on multiple fields is an AND search. Not sure.
Yeah, so I think the question is, if I fill out more than one of these fields, is it going to look for contacts that match all of those criteria or contacts that match any one of them? And the answer is the former. So I suppose in that way it would be an and search.
Great, thank you. And there is a question about, is there a search functionality for PUIs?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this user has access to the PUI queue, but just like all the other queues, it will have that search feature within it. So that means that if I want to look for any PUI that qualifies for the PUI queue, I can search within that queue. It is worth pointing out that the search cases menu does not search PUI records.
Thank you. And now a question around the form navigation. When you submit a form and it brings you back to the same list, if you had sorted that list and are working from the middle, does it bring you back to the same sort you had and the same page in the list?
That's a great question. I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. There's a question on the new identified duplicate case search functionality. Is the goal of this new functionality to speed up the deduplication process?
Yeah, so the goal was to provide some additional flexibility with the search itself. But I do think that there are some time-saving aspects, such as the fact that it will pre-populate your search criteria so that you can just submit it and then return a list of records that matches.
Great. The next question is about the vaccine questions. This says, is there a reason we did not include refuse to answer as an option for the first dose? So maybe we'd have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, I'm just going to reopen a contact monitoring form quickly. Right, so we do have a refuse to answer option here for if you've received the vaccine at all. I'm not sure if that answers the question. If there isn't information about, like if the person that you're speaking with doesn't have the information about their manufacturer or something like that, for example, these aren't required questions at the moment, so you wouldn't have to fill them out, or there's also an option to indicate unknown.
Great, thank you. In the screen where you see all cases, if you're a case investigator, is there a way to be able to see the last time you got in touch with the case and if there was a note added?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand which screen the question is referring to.
I think it's for cases, the screen where we have all of our cases. That might be.
It might be the My Cases list of cases assigned to me. So I think the question is, are you able to see when you last spoke to them? So we do have a days since last follow-up column. I'm not sure if that answers the question. We don't display a note here within the case list itself.
Okay. Thank you. Does the search all cases within the list feature include archived cases or contacts?
No, it doesn't. So it only includes contacts when you're doing it within the list itself. It only includes records that qualify for that list, so the ones that would normally show up in that list. So it follows all of those same criteria, which I believe for all of our lists means that they're not archived and they're stored in the active location.
Okay. Great. And for the deduplication search, does it search all files, cases, PUIs, and contacts? I see this was answered in the Q&A, but just to answer it verbally as well, it does not search across all different record types, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, just all right. As a supervisor, I search in all open contacts to view the records that my contact tracer has assigned to them. How can I view their records? So the supervisor will still be able to see all of those records, correct?
Yeah, so that workflow will not change for the supervisor user. I see some requests for system enhancements or updates to some of this functionality. Just want to remind everyone that if you do have enhancement requests or suggestions, you can submit those through CommCare, and they will be put through the review process like all of our enhancement suggestions. Okay, there's a question. If a contact tracer is covering for a teammate who's absent that day, how would you find their cases? So could you go in all open cases and search? Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it depends. So if they've been temporary assigned to you because you're covering that person, then they'll show up in your queues by default because they're temporarily assigned to you. But jumping into all open cases, I still can do a sort on the primary owner here and find them that way. Or I can also search on primary owner. So if I wanted to search for all of the open cases that are assigned to Robin, I could do that via the search as well.
Okay. A couple questions, I think, on the identify duplicate or the search for duplicates. If there are no duplicates, do you return back to that identify duplicate case or contact form?
Yeah, so if there aren't any duplicates, well, one option is you can change your search query and maybe make it less specific. But yeah, also you can just use your little navigation at the top of your screen to jump back to wherever in your, we call it the breadcrumbs, you'd like to go.
Great. And then a question on if the deduplication search searches for closed records as well as open records.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what closed means in this context, but the answer should be yes. However, if the record has already been closed and marked as a duplicate, the form will let you know, like, this record has already been closed as a duplicate so that you don't need to repeat that process.
Okay. And then a question on the filter views. So will a case investigator see all of the cases that have been assigned in the last few days in the My Cases queue, even if the case is reassigned to another CI? And then it also says, or is this a filter that's occurring in all open cases and all cases only?
Yeah, so every queue still has the same criteria that it has always had. So for my cases, I'm still going to be seeing cases that are assigned to me. So tailoring the records that show by default has not actually updated the criteria of which records qualify for which queue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. And then with the search functionality, how far back does the search go? For example, does it go back 6 months ago or to the beginning of CommCare?
So if you're speaking about the search function within the queues themselves, once again, you're only going to see the records that you would already see in that queue. So if the queue is only open cases, for example, you're only going to see cases that are currently open right now.
Okay, and if it was the all contacts or all cases queue?
You would see all of the records that qualify for that queue.
Okay.
The best way, if you want to search just like absolutely everything, is to use that search cases or search contacts menu directly, which searches a much broader range of records.
All right. If you're going into a record just to check on something and you don't make changes to the record, is that going to show up in your queue as a record that you've accessed in the last 5 days?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I would want to follow up on that one to confirm if you need to actually make a change or if just viewing would be enough.
Okay. There's another question about the and search. So again, I think trying to search on multiple criteria, is there a way to sort of force that search?
I'm not sure I've understood what force that search would mean in this context.
Okay, so Elizabeth, who entered this, if you want to put more information in the Q&A, I'll find it. Okay. And just a clarification, the vaccine questions, those are also for both cases and contacts?
That's correct. So they're in the clinical and vaccine information section of the contact monitoring form.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure if this needs more information, but when deduplication is done and one record is closed, does it cross-reference the other ID?
So when we complete the deduplication and we close one of the records, we do only maintain one ID, which is the one of the record that the user selected to keep.
Okay. Are there any changes in regards to travelers in CommCare? So can you, Elena, maybe speak to which of the changes here apply to travelers?
So I don't think that we have singled out travelers as being separate from contacts. So the changes that we reviewed for contacts should also be relevant if you are working in the traveler location as well.
All right, a little bit of clarification on the question about the and search. So it says you said the default search is or if you put in multiple items. Is there a way to search in and mode by using a connector search such as George and Undercliff Avenue and New Jersey?
So it might be that the way I explained it wasn't very clear. So if I enter more than one criteria at once in the search, it is going to search for records that match all of those criteria. So if I enter both a first name and a date of birth, it's only going to bring me records that match both that first name and that date of birth.
Okay. And if you were in the, okay, I think that answers the question. Thank you. Okay. If a case investigator searches in all open cases, will they then see cases that they've not touched in the last 5 days?
Yeah, so the goal of this search is to allow the users to still have access to all of the records in that queue. So if I come into all open cases, I won't see every single case that qualifies for this queue by default. But if I search, I'm able to search all of the records in this queue. And if I submit a blank search, then it's just going to load every single record that qualifies for this list. So like you can see now, whereas before I only had maybe 2 or 3 pages, now I can access every single record that qualifies for this list. So I still can view, edit, access all of those records and search for them. They just don't display by default when I first open up the queue.
Great, thank you so much. I'm just gonna see, it looks like those were all the Q&A questions. I just wanna make sure I didn't miss anything in my chat. If you have 2 duplicate records that are identified, can you select both at one time, or do you have to go back, do one at a time and then select the second one?
You do still need to select one at a time. So you would have to run through that de-duplication process twice if you had 2 duplicates.
Okay. And while you're in the record search, if you notice, for example, that a contact's name was spelled wrong, are you able to make corrections within the search, or would you have to go into that record?
So if you're going to edit the data in the record, you would need to access the record itself.
Okay. There's a question on if any required questions were added with this update. I don't believe so, Elena. Can you confirm?
Yeah, so we did not add any new required questions or make any existing questions required if they were not previously with this particular release.
Okay. And one more question. With this update, will the SMS opt-out symptoms contact me requests now show up in the contact tracer hub? I don't think that was part of this update.
Yeah, so we haven't, none of these changes should have impacted the behavior for if a contact responds, contact me to their SMS survey.
Okay. And to the person who asked this, if you think that the behavior that's happening is not correct to the way you understand it's supposed to be happening, definitely submit a ticket to concierge so they can take a look at that. Okay, one more. All right, I think. Okay. I think that was everything. I'm going to allow Piper to take back host control so she can save the Q&A. I want to thank everyone so much for your time today. I know this was a long one. What we'll do with the recording is do some slicing and dicing so we can focus in on the specific portion. So if you want to come back and review just the contact tracing portion or just the exposure notification portion, you can do that. And also for colleagues who may have missed this. So with that, I'll thank everyone very much for your time. Thanks so much, Elena and Kevin, and to Laura who had to hop off. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.